Hello everyone, today we are going to discuss the venous drainage of skull and cranial cavity. Okay, so whenever you are discussing the venous drainage of skull and the cranial cavity, please remember number one thing, you must have to know about the dural venous sinuses. Number one thing. Number two, you must have to know about the diploic veins. And number three, you must have to know about the emissary veins. Okay, so I will show you in the diagram also. So dural venous sinus we are going to discuss in detail. So first one, second one, the diploic veins. What are the diploic veins? Diploic veins, please remember, these are the veins which are occupying channels within the bones of the vault of the skull. Okay, vault of the skull, please remember, vaults of the skull, it is also known as skull cap or calvaria. Okay, which consists of the frontal bone, the parietal bone, some part of the temporal bone. So diploic veins are the veins which, or they are occupying the channels within the bones of the vault of the skull. Okay, and they are known as skull cap or also known as calvaria. Okay, then third one is your emissary veins. So what are the emissary veins? Emissary veins, please remember, they are valveless veins that pass through the skull bones also, skull bones, and they are going to connect the veins of the scalp to the dural venous sinuses. So please remember, it can be a source of infection. So it is a route for the spread of infection. Okay, and dural venous sinuses we are going to discuss in detail. So see this diagram, all students. So first of all, what are the emissary veins? See here, these are valveless veins which I am highlighting in red color. So they are passing through the skull bone. So this is the skull bone. So they are passing through the skull bones, and now they are connecting the veins of the scalp. So these are the layers of the scalp, veins of the scalp to the venous sinuses. Okay, so this is your dural venous sinuses. Okay, so they are connecting each other. What are diploic vein? This is your diploic vein which I am highlighting here in the green color. So they occupy channels within the vault or within the bones of the skull. Okay, especially in the skull cap or calvaria, and they are also draining into your dural venous sinuses. Okay, so these are your diploic veins which I show you in the green color, and your emissary veins which I show you in the red color. Okay, so now we must have to know what is dural venous sinuses. So please remember, dural venous sinuses, they are present in a double fold of dura mater. Okay, so please remember, dura mater is having two layers. So dura mater is having two layers. One layer with the outer layer which is near to the skull bone, that is known as the endosteal layer, and the another layer which is near to the meninges, that is known as the meningeal layer. So between these two layers is your dural venous sinuses. So in this picture, see here all students, so I will change the color so it will be easy for all of you. So this is this dark layer, think it that this is your endosteal layer. So this is the endosteal layer of the dura mater of the dura mater. Okay, and then this dark, this one layer, which is near to the meningeal layers, this one. This is the meningeal layer of the dura mater. So this is the meningeal layer of dura mater. So now space is present there. This space is known as sinuses, and the blood which is here, that is the venous blood, so it is known as dural venous sinuses. So dural venous sinuses, it is present between the two layers of the dura mater. Please remember, very important point, that there are no walls present, okay, in the dural venous sinuses, in the cerebral veins, in the cerebral veins, in the cerebellar veins, okay, and even in the veins of the brain stem. All are your what? Brain stem. All are having no walls present in it, okay. So this is your dural venous sinuses. Now we must have to discuss about various dural venous sinuses. So as you can see in this picture, all students, okay, number one, in this picture you can see this sinuses, which I am highlighting at the moment in the red color, dark red color, okay. So this sinuses which I am highlighting in the dark red color, this is known as superior sagittal sinus. Superior sagittal sinus. Okay, please remember this superior sagittal sinus. It lies in the, or you can say it lies in the upper border of falx cerebri. Falx cerebri. Okay, so this whole portion, this one which I am highlighting at the moment in light blue color, this is known as falx cerebri. Okay, it is the fold of the dura mater. It is a fold of the dura mater. So please remember that the superior sagittal sinus lies in the upper fixed border of falx cerebri. Okay, upper fixed border of the falx cerebri. Second, this one, which now I am highlighting in the dark red color. Okay, this one. So this is your inferior sagittal sinus. Inferior sagittal sinus. So where is the inferior sagittal sinus present? It lies in the lower margin of falx cerebri. Upper margin or upper border of falx cerebri, you have superior sagittal sinus. In the lower margin of falx cerebri, you have inferior sagittal sinus. Okay. Now see here, this inferior sagittal sinus, please remember this inferior sagittal sinus here, inferior sagittal sinus, it is joining together here by another sinus. For example, if I draw here one more vein, so this vein is known as the great cerebral vein of Galen. Great cerebral vein of Galen, according to author name. So this great cerebral vein of Galen, it is joining the inferior sagittal sinus, and when it is going to join the inferior sagittal sinus, now it is going to make this sinus which I am highlighting in green color. So this is known as straight sinus. Okay, so straight sinus. So the next point which you must have to remember, that the great cerebral vein of Galen joins with the inferior sagittal sinus. I am going to write ISS, inferior sagittal sinus, and now it is going to form what? It is going to form straight sinus now. Okay, it is going to form the straight sinus now. Now see here, this straight sinus, it is going to join with this superior sagittal sinus here. So now see here, then it is going to join here with this straight sinus here. This sinus is known as this part. now which I am drawing in dark blue color. So this part which is joined together here by the superior sagittal sinus and the straight sinus, this is known as the confluence of the sinuses. Confluence of the sinuses. Okay, so please remember, straight sinus joins with the superior sagittal sinus, and now it is going to form the confluence of the sinuses. Okay, now please remember, confluence of the sinuses, they are going to drain into transverse sinus. I will show you in the next picture, into the transverse sinus on both sides, and now the transverse sinus will continue as the sigmoid sinus, and sigmoid sinus will continue as your internal jugular vein, and it passes through the foramen, jugular foramen, okay, and enter into the neck region. So this is how your you can say the sinuses of the dural venous sinuses. Now see this picture, all students. First thing, see here. So this is your superior sagittal sinus. Okay, so this superior sagittal sinus, it is joining together here by this sinus. Okay, take the green color. So this is your This is your inferior sagittal sinus. Now inferior sagittal sinus, it is joining here by this great vein of Galen. So great vein of Galen, it is joined together here with the your inferior sagittal sinus, and when they join together, now they are forming this sinus. This sinus is known as straight sinus. Now straight sinus is joining together here with the superior sagittal sinus, and when they both are joining together, it is now forming the confluence of the sinuses. Confluence of the sinuses, please remember, one more sinus will going from downward, and it is also draining into the confluence of sinuses. This is known as the occipital sinus. Occipital sinus. Okay. Now from the confluence of sinuses, now it is going to form here this sinus, which I am showing in the red color. This is known as the transverse sinus. From transverse sinus, it will go as a sigmoid sinus, and sigmoid sinus, it will continue as your internal jugular vein. Okay, so this is your internal jugular vein. This portion here, this is your sigmoid sinus now. Okay, this is your sigmoid sinus now. Okay, so this is clear to all of you. Now one thing what you must have to remember, that the superior sagittal sinus and the inferior sagittal sinus both are present along with your straight sinus. They are present in the falx cerebri. So please remember, in the falx cerebri, which is a double fold of dura mater, it contains superior sagittal sinus, number 1, number 2 inferior sagittal sinus, and number 3 at the base it contains the straight sinus. Okay, it contains the straight sinus at the base of the skull. Okay, it contains the straight sinus. Now we must have to discuss one more sinus here. This is your deep circulation. Now other sinus which we must have to discuss here is this sinus, that is known as the cavernous sinus. So write down what is the cavernous sinus now. So please remember, cavernous sinus. Number 1 important point, that two channels are coming, two are the tributaries of the cavernous sinus. What are the tributaries of the cavernous sinus? Number 1, superior ophthalmic vein, and number 2, it is the inferior ophthalmic vein. So these two are the tributaries of the Cavernous sinus. Tributaries means the incoming channels. Incoming channels. But one thing, please remember, all students, that your superior ophthalmic vein, it has a bidirectional flow. So it is draining also, and it is also an incoming channel also. Okay. It is also draining and it is also incoming channel to the cavernous. So it is having a bidirectional flow. So in this diagram, this portion, this is your cavernous sinus, and this one which I am highlighting at the moment in the dark blue, this is your superior ophthalmic vein. This one which I am highlighting in dark green color, this is your inferior ophthalmic vein. Okay, inferior ophthalmic vein. So these two are the tributaries of the cavernous sinus. One more important point, that cavernous sinus, please remember, cavernous sinus, it is intradural. It is present in the dura mater, between the two layers of the dura mater, that is the uh, endostrial layer and the meningeal layer. So it is intradural. And cavernous sinus, please remember, drains into your which channels? It will drain into your two channels. Now see the diagram. Number one, this one, this dark green which I am showing, this is the superior petrosal sinus. And then this second one, this is your inferior petrosal sinus. So this is the inferior petrosal sinus in brown color, and dark green color, that is the superior petrosal sinus. So cavernous sinus, which is intradural, please remember, it is draining into the superior petrosal sinus and it is draining into the inferior petrosal sinus. Now you must have to know where these two sinuses are draining. Okay, so please remember the superior petrosal sinus. Superior petrosal sinus, it is draining into your transverse sinus. 1 point. Second, the inferior petrosal sinus, it is draining into your internal jugular vein. Okay, so this is how this whole drainage. Now this cavernous sinus, please remember, it is also draining here into the, it is also draining here into this vein. So this is your, okay, this is your inferior petrosal sinus. Okay, but please remember, cavernous sinus is also draining into your deep facial vein. So cavernous sinus, one more, you can say draining, three draining channel. The one draining channel, cavernous sinus, drains into your deep facial vein, and from deep facial vein it will go into your facial vein. Okay, so this is your whole, you can say, dural venous sinuses. One last thing which you must have to remember in relation to the cavernous sinus. Please remember, cavernous sinus, as I already told to you, it is intradural. Intradural. And when it is intradural, see here, this is the, you can say, the two layers of the dura mater, and now it is enclosing these structures. So some structures are present passing through the cavernous sinus. So which structures are passing through the cavernous sinus? Cavernous sinus, as you can see in the diagram, it is the internal carotid artery, and it is your sixth cranial nerve, that is the abducens nerves. Abducens nerve. Okay, and there are other nerves which are forming the lateral border of, forming the lateral border of your cavernous sinus. So what are these structures? These are your third cranial nerve, fourth cranial nerve, fifth cranial nerve, ophthalmic branch, And fifth cranial nerve, mandibular branch. Okay, so in some books mandibular branch is forming the lateral border, in some books it is outside the cavernous sinus. Okay, so this is your whole discussion of the uh, venous drainage of the skull and the brain. Thank you.